So this is part three of Where is the Love? Okay. You know, the other thing about taking accountability on a more civic and societal level is that we have to take accountability for the people who lead us or the people that we've chosen to lead us. And this is very important because, these people are creating the laws under which we live. Okay. And it's also these laws that allow those within the economic and social spheres of our society to do what they do and get away with what they get away with. Okay. So taking accountability also very much requires us as citizens, whether you vote or not, because I know there's those people who will be like, if you don't vote, then you don't get a say. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's accurate. And that's just, if you pay tax, do you not get a say? And also, I'm not saying that only like the highly rich people who pay lots of tax should have more of a say. If you pay value added tax on the goods and services that you purchase in your country, you have a say how your tax money is used, okay? And you have a say on how the tax money pays those in government to draw up and enact the laws, okay? So we have to be civically educated. We need to know what our constitution says, for example. I've spoken about this before, that there's a lot of people in South Africa who don't know what the constitution says, and then when things happen, they're like, oh, this is unconstitutional. And then they look and it's actually constitutional. One of the things, for example, that appears to be unconstitutional is how foreigners are allowed to come into South Africa, access government services, all of them, and open businesses and buy property. And then people say it's unconstitutional. It actually is constitutional. If you read the constitution, you'll see that there are provisions in there that say that foreigners have full access to all government services, schools, clinics, etc., and they're allowed to open businesses and they're allowed to buy property here. So essentially, I think what we're seeing is that, where the Freedom Charter says South Africa belongs to all who live in it, well, initially it said black and white, but now they've enacted what looks to me like South Africa belongs to all who live in it, foreigner and citizen alike, So we need to make ourselves aware of what's in our constitution, before we act as if what's happening is against the law. Yes, it's illegal for illegal immigrants to do stuff illegally, foreigners who are here illegally. Yes, okay, but it's not even very clear in the constitution how much your mode of entry, whether it's legal or not, how much it bars you from accessing these goods and services. So I think it's very important for citizens to be civically educated and to be civically involved. Because, if we're always going to say, well, I voted for them, they should do their job, and they should uphold the rights of the citizens according to the Constitution. Look, you're dealing with human beings. A lot of them are just in there because it's a very nice paycheck. You need to hold them accountable. It's like I listened to an interview once with Deputy Judge President of the Constitutional Court, Dikgang Motseneke. And he said the Constitution of South Africa may be one of the most liberal and lovely on planet Earth, but it does not enforce itself. You as a citizen have to enforce your Constitution. Therefore, if you want it to serve you, you must enforce it. And it has a lot of provisions that allow you to enforce your rights as a citizen over the rights of a foreigner. And on top of that, if you are dissatisfied with how many rights foreigners have, that basically puts them on a par with a citizen, a tax-paying citizen of this country, you can make it a point to challenge those provisions in the Constitution. We have a lot more power than we use as citizens, especially in a country like South Africa. It's a democracy, it's a liberal democracy. The avenues that are available for citizens to exercise their rights are huge, but people just don't know that. And it's by design, obviously, that they don't know that. Do you think people who are going into governments to fulfill their own selfish objectives are going to make it a point that you know how to hold them accountable, And so obviously those people need to deal with their own conscience and, they're going to face themselves in the end and whatever, But we as citizens who are concerned must make it a point to become civically educated. Those of us who have the means to help others become more civically educated should take it upon ourselves to do so in whatever capacity we have, And I think we also need to hold each other accountable. Like, I was very much reluctant to get on board with the whole tax the rich movement, like you see with Greenpeace, and I think even Oxfam has. But, when you think about it, there's a lot that goes into exploiting human beings and the planet, that makes the wealthy people very wealthy. You know what I'm saying? Now, I'm not talking about like someone who's just like a millionaire, multi-millionaire. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about like the tens of millions, dollar millionaires, billionaires. That's what I'm talking about. Those people, I think, need to be held accountable to play much more of a role, especially if they are making their money through the extraction of natural resources, for example, especially if they are making their money through the exploitation of land, in various ways. Okay. And even more so if they're making their money through the exploitation of their fellow human beings. It's just obviously, I think, just like how I was talking about in part two, where it's difficult as a child if you grow up in an environment where you get harshly punished for taking accountability for something you've done. Similarly, we do live in a world where wealthy people or people with money are able to coerce people, like how you see with human trafficking. And if they try and run away or, hold them to account in some way, take them to court if they manage to escape, sometimes they'll end up killed, their families will be threatened or even killed, their property will be damaged, their houses will be burnt, all sorts of horrible things will happen, and law enforcement will be bribed to look the other way. So it is very much difficult for a lot of people, especially when they don't have means, when they've been raised in abusive environments, where they've seen the abuse of power of those who should be protecting them, just go unpunished. They will themselves just be people who don't seek to hold anyone to account, because it's very damaging. Like we see with Africa, how many whistleblowers have ended up dead when they were trying to show the horrible corruption, like for example at Tembisa Hospital, that saw money going into the pockets of the rich and the elites and the politically connected, while patients who are South African citizens are, sleeping on the floor. The sheets are not being laundered properly because people are stealing the money and just sending their sheets to be washed like at a laundromat, essentially, or by ladies in the back with buckets and soap. I mean, obviously we all know it's like an industrial cleaning process that you need to do with hospital sheets, because it's essentially you're dealing with bio waste, right? So I think, as citizens, though, the more each of us on an individual basis start taking civic responsibility seriously, we will start to make a dent. And this is also why I talk about culture development, because developing a culture is an intergenerational undertaking. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And this is exactly what this type of civic responsibility entails. It entails us developing a culture of being civically involved and a culture of caring for our fellow human beings, caring for our fellow citizens, and holding accountable those who are in positions of power, whose job mandates them to take care of the interests and to better the lives of the people, because we know the money is there. We know that too many rich people get away with not paying their fair share of taxes, let alone just their taxes, but also doing their fair share to contribute to the world that has given them so much that to make them wealthy. I know there's a lot of like liberal capitalists who will say, no, these people put in money. Like in Marikana, for example, one of the arguments was like, this mining giant has put in billions to make sure that these mines are operational. Why should they have to raise the wages of their workers who do basically nothing? Well, I mean, it's not just, okay, let's say that they do basically nothing in terms of the financial costs, but these are human beings who are working for you, and I think perhaps this is where the issue of the love is most important. What does it mean to be a human being? We know what we talk about when we say umuntu ungumuntu ngabantu, but this is also perhaps why we really do need to take seriously the need to codify Ubuntu, so that when people say they're operating on the basis of Ubuntu, there must be love and truth there. True intentions, not fake intentions, you know what I'm saying? And real love for the value that a human being is, whether or not they can contribute economically or socially or whatever, or politically to any situation. Thank you.